everyone. So I read the article by Deb Smith Shank called Sugar, Spice, and Everything, Reflections on a Feminist Aesthetic. And so within this article, she's essentially playing off of that sort of story narrative where it says, you know, girls are made of sugar, spice, and everything nice. And essentially she's examining how throughout her personal history, she has been made to feel that she should be, you know, sugar, spice, and everything nice, and how through her lack of role models at a time before the feminist art movement, she struggled to find it within herself to, you know, sort of find what eventually became her feminist aesthetic and feminist ethic as an artist and art educator. So, the main questions that she's really asking through this article are: how does her own history, artwork, and educational practice challenge patriarchal culture and demonstrate her strong feminist ethic? And additionally, how does her history parallel the histories of other female artists and art educators, and together question basic societal assumptions? So, essentially she's looking to contextualize herself and her history within the feminist context, and also sort of provide examples for how she developed these feminist role models and sort of developed into this champion for the feminist ethic, and you know, what I think a lot of young artists and art educators would consider she is sort of a feminist role model as well. So she does this by actually sort of examining her history and sort of breaking it down into these different subheads, where she sort of says, you know, what are little girls made of, and you know, all sugar, spice, and all that's nice. So you know, when she was a child, she learned to speak and socialize in the way that we all learn to socialize at school, you know, in our normal community, but outside of, you know, her small conversations and relationships with others, you know, she sort of felt as though she was taught to be silent. And she gives this example where when she was in class, when she was a young girl, she would actually cover her mouth with her hand as a means for sort of like literally keeping herself quiet within these classrooms. You know, she grew up, she went to art school, and she says, you know, her real hero was Pablo Picasso, and you know, he is sort of seen as a genius, and she sort of examines this notion of genius as it was traditionally described as something that was, you know, primarily sort of solely male driven, but you know, now she states that you know, she gives the example from the Guerrilla Girls book where they say you don't need a penis to be a genius. So you know, when she was in college, her studio professors and male peers were all you know, sort of within the modernist formalist time period, so they weren't asking her really to contextualize her work or think about her work sort of beyond you know, what we would think of now as like the DBAE model, and so she felt as though if she had been asked to contextualize herself, her responses would have been unladylike. And you know, she goes through sort of just exploring her different experiences, and then sort of you know, explains that when she was in her 30s, she struggled to consider herself and quantify herself as an artist, even though she had been a practicing artist and had exhibitions and a studio practice, because she sort of felt as though she needed to be given permission to consider herself or call herself this. And so what she says is that she wants her students to feel empowered, to have female feminist role models, to question basic societal assumptions, to ask these complex questions that now she is asking, and the feminist art education movement and feminist art movement are asking their students to ask of themselves and of society. So, you know, through these things that she's looking at, she's demonstrating that the complexities of our individual narratives are significant. And there's a part when she's talking about how she is teaching a course, and she actually brings in some of her own work to show the students. And through sort of showing this visual history of her own artistic practice, she sort of comes to the realization that all of her drawings and paintings are contextualized self-portraits, even when she's not present in the picture. So the absent signs are sometimes the most powerful. And so I thought this was a really powerful statement because, you know, the history of women and also minorities and those that are underrepresented in our society are like a fundamental piece of our history, whether or not they're dominantly reinforced in sort of, you know, our curriculum or our society as a whole. I do think that she definitely could have probed a bit further into the complexities of these questions, but I think she does sort of create like a nice resounding portrait of her self-examination with these complex ideas. In my experience, Deb Smith-Shank, you know, has written a lot of pivotal articles on feminism and art education, so I think it's important for us as readers and researchers to get an idea of, you know, so how does she come to this conclusion and this passion? How, you know, were her experiences similar to maybe our experiences as women or female, or those who are maybe marginalized within the greater canon of art in general? And I think as an art educator, female and male, and for our female and male students, it's important to understand what a feminist ethic of inclusion looks like in our art classroom. So if we're able to, you know, create a greater consciousness and challenge these comfortable assumptions, I think that, you know, as a society we can really grow, and as art educators we can really encourage and foster a lot more investigation and constructive criticism from our students in the classroom. So, I mean, she had some really beautiful quotes, I think. That was sort of some of the resounding strong points within this article. And, but generally the article was rather short and pretty brief, even though I thought she did sort of thoroughly answer the questions that she asked at the beginning. So I'll just leave you with one quote. "Feminist artwork is about agency and about being heard. It is about finding non-hierarchic alternatives to patriarchy. It is about making art for personal growth and political insurrection. It is about participating in the construction of culture, a culture where women can have role models, women can make art and name themselves artists if they want. I want this for my students." And I think that this is something that we can all relate to. And, you know, whether you're a male or a female, I think that these are all things that, if you are sort of, you know, a constructive, critical participant of society, I think that you can ask these things of your students through constructive curriculum development. So, yeah, I would consider giving it a read. I mean, it's short. It's definitely something worth taking a look at. Thanks.